Ever wonder how an organization that's kind of stuck at a real crossroads can actually design its own future? It's a huge question. In this explainer, we're going to go deep inside the strategy of a real foundation called FIP to see how they built a concrete plan to move from a bit of chaos to total clarity.
So, how do you do it? How do you take a team with a, let's say, complicated past, stuck in a really crowded market, and forge a clear, focused identity? This was the exact problem FIP was staring down. And their journey, it's a fantastic lesson in how to build a brand that really means something.
So here's the roadmap for their journey. It unfolded in 5 key steps. First, they had to face their identity crisis. Then, they looked at their heritage, what they already had. Next, they dreamed up a new vision, mapped out the path to get there, and finally created the final blueprint. Let's jump in at the beginning.
Okay, so FIP is a foundation that provides training services. And they had a massive problem. The market they were in was so crowded that the team had this brilliant Polish phrase for it, do wyziugu, which basically means so full it makes you sick. They were completely lost in the noise and knew something had to change, and fast.
To find their way out of this mess, the team used this really cool strategic tool, the Bullseye brand positioning model. Just think of it like a map. It forced them to get brutally honest about today, their starting point, and then to dream big about tomorrow, their ultimate destination. Everything else, right there in the middle, represents the bridge they had to build to connect the two.
You know, any big journey has to start with an honest look in the mirror. So for FIP, this meant really dissecting their heritage, the good, the bad, and the ugly. All the assets, the baggage, and the history that defined their starting line. And their history was, well, kind of messy. It started with some academic projects, turned into a pretty unfocused venture, and FIP itself was only really born during the pandemic. But the most important event, it happened just 6 months before their big strategy session, a team split. And you know what they called it? The best thing that could have happened. Kind of weird, right? But it created this clean slate, a new beginning with a team that was finally on the same page. The founder, Mateusz, just nailed the problem perfectly when he talked about his old venture. He said it was from everything and from nothing. It's that classic jack of all trades, master of none problem. And because of that painful experience, he knew the new FIB absolutely had to be laser-focused.
So this was their today in a nutshell. On the plus side, they had the founders network and that new cohesive team. But the downside was huge. Everyone just saw them as the grant getters, not a top-tier training company. And this led to a massive insight. Their real client wasn't the person getting the training. It was the director or owner who actually signed the check.
All right, so with a crystal clear picture of the present, FIP could finally start designing the future. And we're not talking about small adjustments here. This was about defining a completely new destination for the brand.
And the scale of this transformation they planned, it was just massive. They wanted to go from being reactive to proactive, from relying on grants to being totally financially independent, and from being seen as a grant getter to being a true market leader. A huge leap.
And they put a number on that ambition, a big one. Their goal wasn't just to grow a little bit each year, no. They were aiming for geometric growth, to become 3 to 5 times bigger in just 5 years. That kind of goal means you have to fundamentally change how you do everything.
So how do you get there? They broke that huge vision down into concrete pillars. Things like become an official educational institution, create their own unique products, not just off-the-shelf stuff, jump into the commercial market to finally get free from grants, and ultimately build a rock-solid reputation for quality that makes clients want to stick around. A vision is fantastic, right? But it's just a nice dream without a realistic plan. So the next step for FIP was to get real. They had to identify the path, what were the major obstacles they would face, and what support systems would they need to build to get over them. 4 core challenges really stood out. First, that public image. They had to completely change how people saw them. Second, they had to create their own unique products to stand out in that makes-you-sick market. Third, if you want to 5x your business, you can't be doing everything by hand. They had to automate. And finally, they needed a real marketing strategy, not just hoping for referrals. So to meet those challenges, they started assembling their toolkit. Tech, like a central CRM to keep everything organized. A real proactive marketing strategy. More people, to avoid what they called the curse of plenty. You know, being so successful you collapse. And maybe most important of all, a laser focus on choosing only the right clients. So, with the past understood, the future mapped out, and the challenges identified, it was time for the final step,
It was time to create the blueprint, to distill everything they'd learned into the pure essence of their new brand. At the very heart of the brand are its values. Think of them like the spine holding everything up. For FIP, these were development, competence, authenticity, and effectiveness. And those values led directly to their brand proposition, a simple promise to be a partner in development, offering great training that's actually accessible. And here it is, the culmination of all that hard work, boiled down into 3 powerful words. Their new brand essence, Projektujemy twoją przedsiębiorczość. In English, we design your entrepreneurship. See how cool that is? It's not just about giving training, it's about being the architect of a client's success. But how do you know if your fancy brand essence is actually, working in the real world? Well, the true test is what the team called the consumer takeout. It's that simple, positive little story you want your customers to tell their friends over coffee. It's the ultimate proof that your brand promise is real. So FIP actually wrote out their ideal customer story. Just listen to how perfectly this reflects their whole strategy. Easier and cheaper. That hits on their grant expertise. Professionally, that's their value of competence. And that last line, I felt like the whole process was designed just for me. That is their brand essence in action. This story is their new identity, brought to life.
In the end, what FIP's journey really shows us is that strategy isn't just some boring document you file away. It's the art of intentionally designing the story that people tell about you. So that brings it back to you. Think about your own company or your project or even just your personal brand and ask yourself this question. What's the one-sentence story you want people to tell?